Greeting to our followers. Today we will hear the plight of a young woman who is suffering due to a childhood trauma. Join us as our main character shares her painful story. Hello. I'm Melissa. I had a difficult life, and it's painful for me to recollect my traumatic experiences that I went through because of my stepfather and my aunt. I believe sharing my story will make a change for women who are in a similar situation. It will also make me feel better. I'm married to the man whom I love. We have a child. Doctors told us we cannot have any more children. My husband changed my life, and I owe him for my happiness. He took me from the streets and gave me a home. Had it not been for my husband, back then when I was helpless, I hated myself and was convinced that I didn't deserve love. But my husband's love changed my destiny. I went through a lot, and I'm going to tell you about them one by one. I was born in Skopje, Macedonia, where I live until I was 5. My father passed away due to illness when I was a child. My mother was a housewife, and my father was the only breadwinner in the family. My father's death brought hardship to our lives. My mother didn't know what to do. She was crying nonstop every day. They loved each other very much. My mother had difficulty supporting me financially. I didn't understand that much because I was too young. When I was 7, my mother got remarried. Her new husband was a distant relative of my mother. After my mother's marriage, we moved to a village. I didn't like the village. My freedom had been restricted. I couldn't behave and dress as freely as before. My mother's attitude towards me changed after she got married. She didn't love me anymore, and she argued with me no matter what I did. I was always to blame. My uncle was staying in the house next door, and he was an idiot. He drank every day, started fights at home, and swore at me every time he saw me. At the age of 13, I would hear swear words almost on a daily basis. Constant arguments and swearing shattered my psychology, and it was one of the worst periods in my life. My stepfather would sometimes help me with my classes. By the time I was 16, my life became miserable. I was constantly told what to do, where to go, and what to wear by my family. I was fed up with this situation. On top of that, my stepfather would stare at me, and that made me uncomfortable. Once while I was studying, my stepfather approached me and put his hand on my leg. I asked him to remove his hand, but he did not remove his hand and started caressing me. My eyes filled with tears. My mother was not at home, and I shouted, "Don't touch me, you dirty man." He was looking at me sideways. I immediately walked away from the room and went to the corner and started crying. My stepfather came up to me again and started threatening me. If I said anything to anyone, he would kill me. "Don't be silly. You are like a daughter to me," he said. But I knew that his intention were bad. I couldn't come to my senses that week. I didn't tell anyone about that incident. However, my alcoholic uncle had seen us. A week later, he visited us in a drunk state and started cursing me. I went to my room and started crying. My mother came to my room and started insulting me, telling me I was immoral for allegedly having an affair with my stepfather. She even raised her hand at me. I had bruises on my hand and waist due to her beating me. I was crying and had nothing to do in that house anymore. I was done. There was nothing keeping me in that house. I had to leave, but I didn't know where I would go. Every day spent in that house was like a hell, and I hated myself. I made a decision. I would be moving to another city. I stole some money from my mother's pocket and left the house. I was going to my aunt who lived in another city. After I got in my aunt's place, I told them everything that had happened to me. I thought they would understand and support me. But my aunt treated me the same way as my mother. I hated everyone. I was on the verge of committing suicide. At the age of 16, I was on my own. After staying 2 months at my aunt's place, they made me feel like a burden. They disliked me. They found a job for me at a restaurant so that I would cover my own expenses. I was working as a waitress. Now I was earning money and could leave my aunt. These were my last days in my aunt's house. My aunt and her children would leave home early in the morning, while I would leave not earlier than 1 a.m. I would sleep until 1 a.m. and then take a shower. Then I would leave for work. I had 2 cousins. One of them was a university student. Once, my aunt's son arrived home early. He asked me why I was at home at that hour. He also asked me whether I had stolen anything. He wanted to make me feel guilty by accusing me of theft. "Get out of our house. We are fed up with you," he yelled. Then he came up to me and tried to hold me by my throat. I kicked him and fled the house. I was never coming back to that house. I went to my friend crying and stayed with her. 2 months passed. I was getting bored in that place. I came across a job advertisement in a resort city. It was a cleaning job in a villa. I was hired to that job. I was going to change my city again. I wanted to start a new life. I thought maybe I would fall in love and build a new life there. But I was not going to be happy there either. The villa where I was going to work a few some male workers. I was yearning for love and affection, and as soon as someone showed attention to me, I first befriended him and then started dating him. He was telling me the words of love that nobody had told me before. We dated for a year. Then I got pregnant. After my pregnancy, his interest in me diminished. He insisted that I get an abortion. As it was my first pregnancy, I was unaware what to do. I didn't even realize I was pregnant until I fainted while doing cleaning. I only found out about my pregnancy after a doctor's examination. When I told my boyfriend about the baby, he started putting pressure on me. He didn't care about us at all. After much pressure and convincing, he got me do an abortion. I was betrayed yet again and didn't trust anybody anymore. I sunk into deep depression and was even considering committing suicide. I stayed alone for 3 years, until loneliness became unbearable. At the age of 26, I met a man who changed my life. He owned the house where I was doing cleaning work. He was single. He fell in love with me and proposed to me. We got married and had a child. My husband is 10 years older than me, but it is not a problem for me. I love him very much. He is the meaning of my whole life. Ever since meeting him, I have put him in the center of my life. I'm focused on my family and will do my best to keep my child happy and ensure that she never goes through what I had to go in life.